DelValle, a constitutional law expert, live for us in Washington. Bruce, good to have you with us. So Donald Trump issued a statement saying nothing like this has ever happened before. How unusual is it for a search warrant to be executed against a former president of the United States?
Well, thank you very much for having me, and that's a great question. It is very unusual. There have been a few instances in the history of the United States where subpoenas were served on presidents and former presidents, including, surprisingly, Thomas Jefferson. He refused to comply with it, but he ultimately gave some documents. Richard Nixon had the subpoena that he refused to comply with, but he resigned, so that went away. And Bill Clinton had a subpoena, which is similar to a search warrant served upon him. He sat for a deposition in a civil case, and it went away. But as far as a search warrant served on a president of the United States or a former president of the United States, this is new territory. But I will say, notwithstanding the hyperbolic statements of the Fourth Amendment and freedom of press and the sanctity of home and unreasonable search and seizures, this was a search warrant. It apparently was a valid search warrant with a judge's imprimatur. And there is a law, it's the Presidential Records Act that came out, that was passed in 1978, that arose as a result of the problems with the Nixon administration. These are what we consider in America as transparency laws, which keep the public informed what its government's doing and prohibits the government, especially the executive, from hiding what it's doing from the American people. It's very clear. Every president knows that whatever they produce, for the most part, whether it's confidential, whether it implicates national security or not, are records belonging to the United States. They are not personal to a president. They are not personal to a person. And every president knows they can't keep them. However, having said that, every president since the passage of the 1978 Presidential Records Act has tried to circumvent the law. Every single one of them. They do it in a couple of ways. One, they try to classify the documents as not being presidential records. They generally fail at that. Two, they say that the National Archivist, who has possession and control of these records, has no power to do that. They usually fail. And then in the case of Obama and Clinton, and to some degree Bush, they tell the staff, don't write anything down. But getting to this point is a rather extraordinary act.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because the law you refer to states that removing or destroying presidential records is a crime. If President Trump is deemed to have removed or destroyed presidential records, could this mean more legal problems for him?
Well, this is an extraordinary where the hint of weaponization comes in. That is a great question, because the statute is very clear. It's a felony to do that. And it not only applies, I might add, to presidential records, but all government records. And Hillary Clinton was accused of doing this. And by all indications, she in fact did do this. She took her computers home with her and worked from home when she was Secretary of State, and then promptly destroyed them when asked. Ed Snowden was accused of taking government records. That's one of the things he was accused of, along with espionage. But what the statute is very clear, and it's 18 U.S.C. 2071, Section 2071, is it's a felony. It's up to 3 years in prison for each incident and a fine of $2,000. But there's a very interesting kicker. Anyone accused of this crime is removed from office and can never hold office in the United States again. So if President Trump is convicted of taking these records, and if the records were within the Presidential Records Act, he can be prohibited from running for office ever again. And the only one that can save him from
that is exactly what his supporters are saying, that this is being used as a deliberate attempt by his opponents to stop him running in the 2024 election.
Absolutely. That's when they tried to impeach him at the last second of his office, the waning moments of his office, it was solely to prohibit him from running again. And that's pretty much what's going on. Interestingly enough, the sitting president has the ability to immunize the past president from liabilities or from the application of laws like this. But in the history of the United States, a Democratic president has never bestowed that favor upon a Republican president, although 3 Republican presidents have done so for Democrats. It's just a fascinating thing.
Yeah, it is fascinating and really interesting, Bruce. Thank you very much indeed for putting that into context for us. Bruce DelValle there in Washington.